guys, today we're going to be evaluating types of markets, okay? So this is actually a pretty easy concept to think about. There are going to be 4 different types of markets that we talk about, and those 4 markets are oligopoly, monopoly, monopolistic competition, and perfect competition. So let's get started. The first one is oligopoly, okay? An oligopoly is 2 or 3 different businesses that make it difficult for you to start a business in that market. And some of the best examples here are Coke and Pepsi, right? So Coke and Pepsi, not only is it Coke and Pepsi, but it's also Gatorade, Powerade, Sprite, 7-Up, Mountain Dew, all those other ones. They make it very difficult to enter the soda market because they've got the market cornered. But it's not just one company, it's multiple companies, multiple firms that corner that market. You could also think about cell phone providers too. So when I think about like cell phone providers that have pretty good service in Lawrenceburg, I think like AT&T, I think Sprint, and Verizon, and T-Mobile actually got bought out. So a lot of these bought out a lot of the smaller companies like US Cellular and Singular and things like that used to be around, and now there's just like 3 giant ones, and you just can't start a cell phone company, a cell phone provider company anymore. It's just too difficult because these people will come in and buy you out, okay? So in an oligopoly, like Coke has to think, what is Pepsi doing so that I can compete? Pepsi has to think, well, what is Coke doing so that I can compete better? So they have to make decisions based on the behavior of competing firms. I'm going to have an entire video about this. It's called game theory, and it is kind of like a game. Their life at Coca-Cola marketing or Coca-Cola the company, are they going to have sugary drinks with real sugar or aspartame? Well, what's Pepsi doing? We got to see what Pepsi's doing, because if they're doing one, then we probably need to do it to make money. We're going to have an entire video just about that. It's called game theory. So let's go ahead and like skip all that, okay? Oh, there's lots of them. We'll be doing that in a different video. Another type of market where multiple companies are competing is called perfect competition. So perfect competition is exactly what it sounds like. There's tons of competition, okay? There's no one that corners the market. There's no one that's better than anybody else. It has an unlimited number of businesses or firms. The best way to think about this, the best example of this is agriculture and livestock. So look at beef, right? When you go to Walmart, you buy a package of beef. Organic or not organic, it doesn't matter. Do you know where that beef comes from? You have no idea. You don't know what farm it comes from unless you buy it directly from a farmer who's selling their beef. That is a perfect competition market. It has an unlimited number of businesses, okay? Here, you could think like corn. When you go buy corn from Walmart, you don't know what farm your corn is coming from. You just kind of buy the corn, okay? So anything agriculture or anything livestock is going to be a perfect competition. Tomatoes, rice, those sort of things. They just don't have a brand. They're kind of unbranded things. Here's a silly example here. Your TikTok videos are kind of perfect competition. So you and your friends make TikTok videos, right? You're not famous. You're not celebrities. You put that TikTok video out into the world. Maybe you're doing the Renegade or some other weird TikTok dance, okay? There are millions of other TikToks that are just like yours. And if I'm scrolling through TikTok and I see your TikToks, you know what? There's tons of others. You're not making any money off of it. It's perfect competition, unless you're a celebrity, and that's just different, okay? So some characteristics of perfect competition. Goods are all very similar. They're all substitutes for each other. I can get beef from Grandma's farm in Flemensburg, or I can get beef from California, and it's all kind of going to taste the same. And at Walmart, it's all going to be packaged the same, or very similar, okay? And this means that the people that have their goods in a perfect competition market don't really get to pick the price. And that's this point right here. Price is set by the market and not really the firm. Because of the natural laws of supply and demand, if a company raises its prices and no one's really going to pay that price, because why would I pay this higher price up here if I can buy a price that's more at equilibrium, or maybe even a lower price from another company. So the forces of supply and demand just make it so that they're not really able to set their price. The price is kind of just set for them, whatever the market says it is. Have you ever been to a restaurant, like a nice restaurant, and you go look at the menu, and for their nice steaks or their nice seafood, it doesn't have a price. It just says market price. So fish and seafood, those sort of things, and oftentimes like nice fancy steaks at nice restaurants will not have a set price because the market will go up and down on those things, up and down. The price will go up and down, and the restaurants don't want to set a price because what if it goes up? And then what if it goes down? And what if it goes up? And what if it goes down? They're maybe not making as much money as they can. And it's not the beef farmers or the fishermen that are setting that price. It's just supply and demand. What will people pay and how much can we supply? We call this price taking, okay? They take whatever price is given to them. So they are called price takers. Whatever price is set by the market itself is the price that they're going to sell their goods for. In this sort of competition, it's very easy to suddenly become a farmer and start selling. There's a high demand for those goods. They are going to sell, okay? It's very rare that a beef farm, livestock, or corn goes under because people are very willing to buy those things, but they're not branded, okay? So it's easy to enter, but it's also pretty easy to leave because you can make some money, but you're not going to be a million bajillionaire, okay? And what this would look like on a graph is this. It's perfectly elastic because there's an unlimited number of substitutes. Remember, our determinants of elasticity were necessity, percent of income, and number of substitutes. Well, this one is all about number of substitutes. A perfectly elastic demand curve right here means that our price equilibrium, it's kind of silly to look at, okay? So here would be our price and here would be our quantity. If the price goes up, which is just kind of silly to think about, let's say it goes up to like here, well, it has to hit the demand curve and then go down. Or the price goes down right here, has to hit the demand curve and then go down. It's just like very strange to look at and very strange to think about because it's perfectly elastic, absolutely elastic. People can buy it, people cannot buy it. It doesn't matter what your brand of beef or corn is. It's not really branded. I can get beef or corn anywhere else, okay? Let's take a look at the next one. The next one you've probably heard about. It's called Monopoly, okay? Not the game Monopoly, but kind of the game Monopoly, right? So you know in the game Monopoly, you are trying to own most of the market. You're trying to own most of the board and put houses on most of the board and put hotels on most of the board, and you want to have like Pennsylvania Avenue and Fifth Avenue and all those fancy places. The purpose of the game Monopoly is to have a monopoly over the housing market. So what is a monopoly? A monopoly is a market with only one firm doing business. And it's not because other firms haven't tried. It's because this one firm has taken over complete control, okay? And one of the ways that they do this is just buy up a bunch of other baby firms. So here's a bunch of like little oil firms, and this big oil firm comes in and has the money to buy this dude out and buy this dude out and buy this dude out. And all of a sudden, this guy owns all the oil. If he owns all the oil and he has no real competition, then he has complete control over the price. You have to pay his price for that good, okay? And we call this a price maker. He sets the price, okay? Because he has no competition. There's no supply and demand equilibrium here. He sets the price, you got to pay it. If that's what you want, you got to pay it, okay? And this makes it impossible to enter the market, right? If I'm a baby company and I want to start a gas station or an oil, I don't know, within this market, it's almost impossible because they set the price. They'll come in and buy you out, okay? And here are some examples of this. Hopefully you remember this from U.S. history if you've taken it already. In the 1880s, it was called the Gilded Age. And big oil and steel companies like Carnegie Steel and Standard Oil by John D. Rockefeller did this exactly up here. They bought out all the baby companies and they end up owning most of the steel plants and most of the oil in the entire country. So they set the prices and they are sitting on some pretty pennies. They're very, very rich men. A more modern example would be Microsoft in the 1980s. Now, you and I weren't alive back then, but when Microsoft first came out, it was kind of the only personal computer you could get. It was the only PC you could get. It was the only PC that companies could get. So that's essentially the only place you could get it. And if you wanted to upgrade your technology, you had to buy from Microsoft. Now that has kind of changed, and in more recent days, we've added like Apple and Google that have started making more computer technology. So nowadays, this would be more like an oligopoly, Microsoft, Apple, and Google. But back in the day, it was only Microsoft, okay? A few more examples here. This one's kind of a silly example. Government-sponsored monopolies in local markets. Sometimes, and Lawrenceburg is kind of like this, but it's not really a monopoly. Sometimes the government will allow a monopoly in their town. And here's the reason why. Let's take like water and gas lines, for example. Okay? If we have town right here, there's a bunch of houses in town right here, okay? A bunch of houses, lots of neighborhoods. There's water and gas lines flowing through those neighborhoods already, okay? So that each house can hook up to water and gas. However, if we have some houses way out here in the country, that was a horrible house. Try again, Miss Keller. We have some houses way out here in the country. Companies don't want to spend the money to run one water and gas and electricity line out there to that house unless they know that house or that area is going to turn into a neighborhood. So they just don't want to do it. So governments, local governments, I'm not talking federal, I'm talking local governments, think like Lawrenceburg City Council and the mayor. They will oftentimes tell a company, we'll give you a monopoly in your market. We'll give you a monopoly. You will be the only water and gas company in Lawrenceburg, but you have to pay to run lines out within a certain mileage outside the city. So there's another house, and because they were given a monopoly, because Lawrenceburg said, we won't let any other water and gas lines come lay lines in Lawrenceburg, but in exchange for giving you a monopoly, you have to run power out to the surrounding area. So that's a government-sponsored monopoly. In Lawrenceburg, we don't really have that. We kind of have a government-sponsored oligopoly, and that's with KU and Bluegrass Energy. If you live in one side of Lawrenceburg, KU is your person and you have no choice. That's where I live. If you live on the other side of Lawrenceburg, Bluegrass Energy is your electric company and you have no choice. So it's kind of monopoly, but it's also kind of an oligopoly because there's two of them, but the government sponsors that, okay? Let's think of a silly example too, okay? So a silly example here would be, let's say you're on the interstate and you're driving, you're driving through the night, and you need to stop for gas. And there's one gas station for miles and miles and miles. They have cornered the market. They know you have to stop for gas, okay? If you don't stop for gas, you're going to run out of gas and have to call AAA or the police or someone to come get you. So they have your business no matter what, and they can set the price. This one is really important in places like Wyoming and Colorado and Utah, where it's flat land and there's nothing for miles. There are actually signs I've driven through Kansas before. There are signs in parts of Kansas that say stop for gas, and it points to the gas station, and it'll say like no gas for 200 miles. And they're telling you right now, if you don't stop for gas now for another 200 miles, there's no more gas stations. Well, guess how much business that one gas station gets? A lot of business. They have a monopoly because they're the only gas station for miles and miles and miles. All right, so that's monopoly. Now, the last one is a combination. It's a combination of perfect competition plus monopoly. And I'm going to write that, and you're going to write it. It's perfect competition plus monopoly. Okay? It's a combination of the two. And the definition literally says where there are aspects of both monopoly and perfect competition. So there are some companies that kind of have the market cornered, but there's also some aspects where you can enter through. And here are the characteristics of that. The firms, the businesses have similar goods, but they're not always the same, and they're not always the same price. But they're pretty similar still, okay? So let me give you an example. I want to pick up a pizza in Lawrenceburg. I can go to The Hut. I can go to Verona. I can go to Little Caesars. I can go to Domino's. I can go to Papa John's, which is the best. Fight me. Papa John's is the best, okay? Those are my options. But it's not an oligopoly. I don't need pizza. They're not going to set the price, right? Because if The Hut lowers their prices, well, then Domino's is going to lower their prices. So it's not really a true monopoly. It's not really an oligopoly. It's monopolistic competition. We have the characteristics of a monopoly. If I want pizza, I have to go to these places. But they still have to compete. Domino's still has to put out garlic knots because Papa John's put out garlic knots, and it's a great idea. Okay? So we've got versions of monopoly where if I want pizza, I have to go here. But versions of perfect competition in here where they don't exactly get to pick their price. They still have to make decisions based on what the other companies are doing, and they still have to lower their prices or raise their prices or have promotions or advertise or have kids' pizza nights and stuff like that, okay? Let's take a look at another example, and then I'll stop boring you with my examples. Maybe we'll look at a few. Video game companies, okay? We've got Nintendo. We've got Xbox. We've got PlayStation. Okay, all those old ones like Atari and stuff, those are gone now, right? These are the big ones. You could also play like on PC if you wanted to play on the PC, okay? If you want to play video games, you got to buy from one of these companies. You got to buy one of their consoles. You got to buy video games off their app store, okay? Or like a third-party app store like Steam or something like that for PC. But, so they've got that market cornered when it comes to monopoly. But you still have to compete with each other, right? If a game comes out on Xbox that's really, really cool and they're not doing cross-platforming, then Nintendo's like, oh, we got to come out with something good. And PlayStation's like, oh, well, I'm going to come out with the PlayStation 5 and it's going to be super stinking expensive, okay? So they all have to compete with each other, even though they know if you want to play video games, you got to come to them, okay? So there's one more example. Let's think about types of cereal. We've got like Kellogg's that owns a bunch of brands. We've got like Lucky Charms. I'm just thinking of specific ones. We've got Frosted Flakes. We've got like all the healthy ones. Blech. Like Kashi. Healthy stuff like Kashi. Gross, okay? So they know that if you want cereal, you got to buy from them. And Kellogg's owns a lot of these brands, actually. And there's some other cereal companies. I just can't think about them. Kellogg's owns a lot of these. And they know if you want cereal, you got to buy some of these. But they also have to compete with each other. Lucky Charms has to put new marshmallows in there and advertise it to kids so that they want it over Frosted Flakes, okay? The healthy cereals have got to be like, look at all the fats in these. And if you notice, there's now some like Cheerios that are like supposed to be heart healthy because they're trying to compete with those healthy cereals like Kashi Go Lean, okay? And then lastly, there is chicken places. Let's talk about chicken places. We can go to Chick-fil-A. We can go to Cane's. We can go to Lee's. We can go to KFC. Although everyone knows that Chick-fil-A is far superior on this list, right? We can go to Joella's, which is pretty good in Lexington. So we're looking at that they have similar goods, though not exactly the same. Let's look at that aspect of it. Chick-fil-A has awesome chicken nuggets and chicken sandwiches. One of their goods, though, is not really a good. It's a service. The service at Chick-fil-A is fantastic. They do it with a smile. They do it quickly. They say, my pleasure. Always the same. and their prices are pretty much the same, okay? You can get away with a full meal, fries, and a drink for $10 each at these places. And some of them even have cheaper ones. I think Lee's has like a $6 dinner, which is awesome. So they know that if you want chicken, you got to come to them. But they still know that they have to try and compete to try and beat out the other companies, okay? And here's where more examples of this come in, or more characteristics of this come in. Firms have to be fiercely competitive to get their business. They know that they're fighting against, Chick-fil-A is fighting against Joella's and KFC and Lee's. Why would I spend so much money for this? Or I should have better service for this. And here's some examples of what they might do to get more sales. They'll advertise. They'll have promotions, coupons, buy two, get one free, kids night, those sort of things. They try to have brand loyalty, okay? If you've ever been to Chick-fil-A, they try and get you to come back and back and back because brand loyalty is important to them. And brand loyalty means that you will go to a place even if it's more expensive because you love it so much. That's like me and iPhone. I will keep buying the new iPhone because they have got my business, okay? Then we've got different competition tactics, different advertising, different service. Like I said, Chick-fil-A is known for their service, but then other companies might be known for how quickly they get things out. And then we've got a very interesting one, community involvement. Think about when the band or the dance team will have Dairy Queen sponsor them. And Dairy Queen will buy an ad on the softball field, or they'll have a softball night at Dairy Queen and you can go and buy Dairy Queen, 10% of it goes to the softball team. That is one way that they get your business. That is a way that they have to remain fiercely competitive. All right, so 4 types of markets. Make sure you review them. We'll go over game theory and all that stuff that I'm skipping later. The 4 types of markets are oligopoly, monopoly, monopolistic competition, and perfect competition. All right, thanks guys.